Hello, friends. Take a minute for yourself and just breathe. I want to share a story with you that might help you see life a little differently. I hope you enjoy listening. Chloe walked out of the hospital just as the evening sky over the city turned a heavy, anxious shade of gray. Her legs moved on their own, right, left, along the path she knew too well, from the main entrance to the bus stop. The asphalt was still wet after the rain, puddles reflecting the dull glow of the streetlights. Somewhere in the distance, an ambulance siren wailed, rushing toward someone else whose life might still be saved. One word echoed in her head: over. She had just said goodbye to Andrew, maybe for the last time. The chief doctor, the one with the gray eyebrows and the tired face, had pulled her aside into the hallway after his rounds and said quietly, "Prepare for the worst. He may not make it through the night. His heart is failing. His body isn't fighting anymore." Chloe had nodded, just nodded, as if they were talking about something ordinary. Then she turned and went back into the room. Andrew lay still, pale, almost translucent, and only the thin IV line and the wires from the monitor reminded her that he was still alive. She sat down beside him, took his cold hand in hers, and tried to warm it. "I'll wait for a miracle," she had thought then. But now, walking out of the hospital, she understood that miracles don't happen. There are only doctors, IV drips, diagnoses, and statistics. And the statistics were not on their side. The worn black bag she had carried for the past 6 months, holding a thermos of tea and a book she had never managed to read, pulled heavily on her shoulder. Chloe stopped by a bench near the main entrance. The bench was wet, but she sat down on the edge anyway, not feeling the cold. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't unzip her bag to take out a handkerchief. The tears were stuck in her throat, but they wouldn't fall. Over the past few months, she had cried everything she had. She sat there, staring at the puddles at her feet, and suddenly caught herself thinking something strange. Once, everything had started so differently. Not with hospital corridors and grim predictions, but with sunlight, chance meetings, and shy smiles. There was a time when the word over didn't mean an ending. It meant a beginning. Closing her eyes, Chloe let herself go back there for a moment, to the days when life seemed long, full of promise, and neither of them could have imagined how many trials they would have to face. 12 years earlier, spring, April, maybe early May, when the trees already had young leaves and the air felt fresh and full of hope. Chloe had been working in the accounting department of the local factory for 3 years. The job was dull and repetitive. Numbers, reports, invoices. She shared a small office with 3 other women, and they all complained about life, the management, and their low salaries. Chloe was 27, and she was afraid she would spend her whole life at that desk, with a calculator and stacks of paperwork. Then there was a knock at the door, and he walked in. Tall, wearing a work jacket, with slightly messy dark hair. His gray eyes looked apologetic, and a shy smile hovered on his face. He held a folder of documents and clearly felt out of place among the women in glasses bent over their calculators. "Hello," he said. "I need to turn in the March invoices. I'm from Workshop 3. Samantha, the head of accounting, nodded toward Chloe. "That young lady there, she handles it." He walked over and placed the folder on Chloe's desk. He smelled faintly of machine oil. "Andrew," he introduced himself. "Engineer." "Chloe," she smiled. "Accountant, as you've probably guessed." She opened the folder and immediately saw the problem. The invoices were filled out incorrectly. Classic. Engineers could never quite handle paperwork. "There are some mistakes here," Chloe said gently. "Look, this amount is wrong, and the date here doesn't match. Let me help you fix it." Andrew blushed. "I'm sorry. I'm not very good at this. Actually, I'm terrible. They asked me to bring it in, so I tried." "It's okay. We'll fix it now. Sit here, and I'll explain." He sat down next to her, and they both leaned over the papers. Chloe pointed things out and explained. He nodded and took notes. Joyce, at the next desk, snorted and gave Chloe a knowing look. Chloe pretended not to notice. "All done," Chloe said 20 minutes later. "Now everything's correct." "Thank you so much." Andrew stood up. "You saved me. The boss was already threatening to cut my bonus." He lingered, shifting from one foot to the other, clearly wanting to say something else but unsure how. "Chloe," he finally managed. "Would it be... I'd like to thank you somehow. Maybe we could have lunch together? In the cafeteria? It's almost break time." Joyce let out a loud snort from the next desk. Samantha raised an eyebrow. Chloe felt her cheeks turn red. "Okay," she said. "Let's." They went down to the factory cafeteria, a big hall with rows of tables, the smell of soup and fried chicken in the air, trays clattering everywhere. They got their food, soup, potatoes with chicken, lemonade, and sat at a small table by the window. "I usually don't come here," Chloe admitted. "I bring sandwiches from home. It's always so noisy here." "Me too," Andrew grinned. "But today I felt like it. Well, I wanted to say thank you for helping me." The conversation started easily. Andrew had been working at the factory for 4 years since finishing college. He lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. He loved reading, especially science fiction. On weekends, he went to the movies or walked in the park. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 3 years, Chloe replied. "I came here right after college. I used to live with my aunt. She raised me. My parents died when I was 8. Last year I rented a room. I'm trying to learn how to live on my own." "I understand," Andrew nodded. "My story's similar. My parents died when I was 3. My grandmother raised me." They looked at each other, and Chloe saw something familiar in his gray eyes, a shared loneliness. For the first time in a long while, it stepped aside. The lunch break was 30 minutes. They talked for 40. When Chloe returned to the accounting office, Samantha looked at her sternly, but said nothing. Joyce smirked for the rest of the day. The next morning, Andrew came back to the accounting office. This time without invoices, but with a bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums. "These are for you," he said. "For yesterday." Joyce coughed with laughter behind her. Samantha rolled her eyes. Chloe took the bouquet, feeling her cheeks burn. "Thank you," she whispered. "They're beautiful." "Can I walk you home after work?" Andrew asked quickly. "Just for a walk, if you don't mind." "I don't mind," Chloe smiled. That's how their story began. Andrew walked her home every day. They wandered through the city streets, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his work, how he loved coming up with new solutions to old problems, how he sketched designs and calculated structures. There was real passion in his voice when he talked about what he did, and Chloe listened, completely captivated. She told him about her dreams, a house of her own with a garden, a big kitchen where she could cook and invite friends over, a quiet life where she wouldn't have to be afraid of tomorrow. "You know," Andrew said one evening as they sat on a bench in the park, "I've been alone my whole life. Well, almost alone. I had my grandmother, of course, but she passed away 5 years ago. Since then, I've been on my own, and I don't remember my parents at all." He fell silent, watching children play in the distance. "There was a car accident. I was 3. Grandma used to say I didn't even cry at the funeral. I didn't understand what was happening. I only remember her holding my hand, and everyone around us dressed in black. Then we went to live at her place, and a new life began." "What was your grandmother like?" "Strict," Andrew smiled. "But fair. She was a literature teacher, made sure I got top grades, read the classics, stayed away from bad company. Her house always smelled like books and fresh pies. She baked the most amazing apple pies." "No other relatives?" "No." Andrew shook his head. "No one. Grandma said her husband, my grandfather, died before I was born, and my father had no family either. So I guess you could say I'm the last one left. Chloe took his hand. His fingers were warm and slightly rough from working with tools and drawings. You're not alone anymore, she said softly. Andrew turned to her, and something in his gray eyes made her catch her breath. Really? He asked, hope in his voice. Really? She nodded. He kissed her right there on that park bench, under the rustling leaves and the distant sounds of children laughing. And Chloe thought that she had finally found what she had been looking for her whole life, without even knowing it. A year later, they got married. The wedding was in June, when the city was wrapped in green and the sun seemed to shine just for them. It was small and simple, about 30 guests. Chloe's co-workers from accounting, Joyce, Samantha, and Kara from the neighboring department. A few of Andrew's colleagues from the factory. Aunt Claire, who had raised Chloe and cried through the entire ceremony, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Justin, Andrew's friend from college, and Rachel, Chloe's school friend. They signed the papers at City Hall in the morning. Chloe wore a simple white dress that she and Aunt Claire had spent 2 months choosing, visiting every shop in town. Andrew wore a dark blue suit, struggling with a tie that refused to sit right. Afterward, they had a reception at a cafe on the outskirts of the city. Not the fanciest place, but cozy, with a summer terrace overlooking the river. The host, in a bright red jacket, entertained the guests with games. Toasts were made every 10 minutes. Aunt Claire sang songs while Justin played guitar. Andrew held Chloe close during their slow dance, as if he were afraid to let her go. "Are you happy?" she whispered in his ear. "Very," he replied. "I didn't even know it could feel like this." They danced until morning. Music thundered, people laughed, glasses clinked. Chloe looked around and thought, this is it, the happiness they write about in books. Simple, ordinary, with a host in a red jacket and cheap champagne. But it was theirs. Real. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet residential area on the 7th floor of a high-rise building. The windows faced a courtyard with old trees and children's swings. The apartment was worn, with peeling wallpaper and creaky floors, but to them, it felt like a palace. "Do you know what I want more than anything?" Andrew asked on their first night there, as they lay on the new sofa, the only piece of furniture they had managed to buy so far. "What?" Chloe whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. "A family. A real big family." There was a dream in his voice. "I want a house full of voices and laughter, kids running down the hallways, Sundays when we all go to the park together, the kitchen smelling like pies, just like at Grandma's. I don't want anyone to feel alone." Chloe lay quietly, listening to his heartbeat beneath her ear. "We'll have it," she promised. "Everything you want." But the years passed, and the promise didn't come true. At first, they weren't worried. They were young, healthy, and had plenty of time. 1 year, 2, 3. Nothing happened. "Maybe we should see a doctor," Andrew suggested carefully in their 4th year. Chloe went. The first doctor looked at her test results and referred her to a specialist. The specialist, an older woman with a stern face, ran more tests and shook her head. "There are problems," she said, not looking up from the file. "Serious ones. It's unlikely you'll conceive naturally." "Then how?" Chloe asked, sitting on the cold chair, feeling everything inside her tighten. "There's IVF," the doctor said, finally meeting her eyes. "It's expensive. It doesn't always work the first time. But there's a chance." They tried. They saved money, found a clinic, went through all the procedures. The first attempt failed. Chloe lay in the hospital room afterward, crying into her pillow. Andrew sat beside her, stroking her back, not knowing what to say. The second attempt failed. The third. The fourth. "Maybe that's enough," Chloe said after the 4th try. She lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe it's a sign. Maybe we're not meant to have children." Andrew sat down beside her and took her hand in his. "Don't say that," he said quietly. "It's not a sign. It's just bad luck, medicine, statistics. I'm tired, Andrew. I'm so tired of hoping every time, and then being disappointed, again and again." He was silent for a moment, thinking. "What if we adopt?" he finally said. "I've been thinking about it for a while. There are so many kids in shelters who need a family. It doesn't matter if they're biologically ours, right? What matters is love." Chloe opened her eyes and looked at him. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Andrew nodded. "I want a family, with you. And if we can't have a biological child, that doesn't mean we can't have children at all." She thought about it. Andrew was right, but something inside her resisted, a deep, almost ancient hurt at her own body for refusing to do what it was meant to do. A stubborn need to prove to herself, to the world, to nature, that she could. "Let's wait a little," she asked. "Let's just live for ourselves for a while. Travel, save up for a house. Take a break from all these hospitals and procedures. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll change my mind about adoption." Andrew agreed. He always agreed with her. They really did start traveling. They worked, saved money. Andrew was promoted to senior engineer, and his salary went up. Chloe moved to a private firm, still as an accountant, but with better pay. They dreamed about their own house, with a garden, a porch, a big kitchen. They looked at listings, went to showings. Life moved steadily and calmly. Sometimes Chloe caught Andrew watching the children playing in the courtyard. She saw something tighten in his face. Her heart tightened with guilt, but she said nothing. She protected him, and he protected her, never blaming her, never reminding her of the dreams that hadn't come true. Then the illness began. At first, it was just fatigue. Andrew would come home from work and collapse onto the couch. "I have no energy at all," he'd say, closing his eyes. "Guess I'm getting old. 43's coming up." "Don't be ridiculous." Chloe would wave it off, though inside she was worried. "You're in great shape." But each day he felt worse. Bruises appeared on his body, small at first, then bigger, for no reason at all. Andrew stared at them, confused. "That's strange. I didn't bump into anything." Then came the nosebleeds. Andrew would pinch his nose with a handkerchief and tilt his head back. Chloe would run for ice. "You need to see a doctor," she insisted. "It's nothing." He brushed it off. "Just a vitamin deficiency. I'll take some supplements. It'll pass." But it didn't. A fever followed, one that wouldn't go down. It lasted for weeks. Andrew took medication, but it only helped for a short while. "Andrew, please," Chloe begged. "Go to the doctor. This isn't normal." "I will," he promised. "Next week. Work's crazy right now. I can't get away." Then he fainted. Right in the middle of the workday. His colleagues called an ambulance. He was taken to the hospital. Chloe rushed there 20 minutes later, dropping everything. Tests, examinations, doctors walking around with serious faces. They consulted each other, discussed something in low voices. Finally, the chief doctor, a middle-aged man with gray eyebrows, asked Chloe into his office. "Please, sit down," he said. Chloe sat. Her hands were shaking. "It's a rare blood disorder," the doctor began, and from his tone she immediately understood that it was very bad. "Aplastic anemia. His bone marrow has stopped producing blood cells properly. Without treatment, the prognosis is unfavorable." "What does that mean?" "It means your husband will die." The doctor didn't soften the words. "Fairly quickly, a few months, maybe half a year." A ringing filled her head. Chloe gripped the armrests of the chair. "What can we do? There has to be some treatment. Chemotherapy?" "Chemotherapy would only have a temporary effect." The doctor shook his head. "A few extra months at most. The only real chance is a bone marrow transplant." "Where do we find a donor?" "Ideally, a blood relative. A brother, sister, parents." The highest chance of compatibility is with close family, almost certain in some cases. Chloe shook her head. He has no one. His parents died when he was 3. There are no other relatives. The doctor sighed. Then we'll search the donor registry. It's more complicated. Harder to find a match. But it's possible. We need time. Time was exactly what they didn't have. Andrew's condition worsened every day. He lay in the hospital bed, pale, dark circles under his eyes. Chloe sat beside him, holding his hand, not knowing what to say. "Don't be scared," Andrew whispered. "They'll find a donor. Everything will be fine." But they didn't find one. 1 week, then 2, then 3. Every day the doctors shook their heads. Every day Andrew grew weaker. "Why hasn't anyone been found?" Chloe asked the doctor. "Why is it taking so long?" "Compatibility is complicated," the doctor sighed. "Your husband has a very rare antigen combination. We're searching, but—" Chloe went back to the room and sat next to Andrew. He was sleeping, breathing heavily, frowning in his sleep. She looked at him and thought, is this really how it ends? Will she lose him just when they had finally begun truly living? Then, 3 days ago, everything changed. Chloe was standing in the hospital hallway, waiting while a nurse changed Andrew's bed linens. The window was slightly open, and cigarette smoke drifted in from the smoking area outside. Voices came with it. "I saw him in Pinewood," a woman was saying. "I swear I thought I was hallucinating. A guy standing outside a store, dirty, drunk, and his face? Exactly like that patient in room 7, the one with the blood disease." "Oh, come on," another woman laughed. "Just a coincidence." "What coincidence?" "I'm telling you, identical. Even the same mole above the eyebrow. I looked twice. For a second I thought maybe he'd escaped from the hospital. Then the guy started yelling something obscene, and I realized it wasn't him, but they looked like twins." "What's his name?" "Who knows? Ross, I think. Local drunk. Lives on River Street, in that old house that's about to be demolished." Chloe's heart dropped. She stood there, her back pressed against the cold hospital wall, and only one thought raced through her mind. What if? The next morning, Chloe didn't go to work. She called her boss, said her husband was in critical condition, and asked for the day off. She got up at 6, though she hadn't slept at all. She had tossed and turned on the couch in the apartment that now felt unbearably empty without Andrew. She kept thinking about what the nurses had said. Pinewood, River Street, Ross, a drunk man who looked exactly like Andrew. Maybe it really is just a coincidence, she tried to convince herself as she made strong tea. People can look alike. It doesn't mean anything. This is crazy. But another voice inside her was more persistent. What if it isn't? What if this is a sign? She finished her tea, put on an old jacket, grabbed her bag. At the bus station, she bought a ticket for the first bus to Pinewood. Departure at 7:20. 40 minutes on the road. Pinewood turned out to be a small town. One long main street, a few side streets, an old market, a couple of shops, a bus station. Chloe stepped off the bus and looked around. Where should she go? How would she find River Street? Near the station, a woman around 50 was selling newspapers. Chloe approached her. "Excuse me," she said. "Could you tell me how to get to River Street?" The woman looked her up and down. "River Street?" she repeated suspiciously. "What do you need there? Nothing but run-down houses. They're about to tear them down." "I need to see someone," Chloe replied carefully. "What kind of someone lives in those shacks?" the woman pressed. "Only drunks. All the decent people moved away years ago." Chloe felt everything inside her tighten. Drunks. So the nurse hadn't been lying. "I still need to go there," she said firmly. "Please just tell me the way." The woman waved her hand. "Straight down that street to the end, then left, across the empty lot. You'll see the old houses. That's River Street. But be careful there. It's not a safe place." Chloe thanked her and walked in the direction she'd been given. The street was dusty and full of potholes. The few people passing by glanced at her, a stranger, clearly from the city, in a decent jacket. She stood out here. The houses on River Street were exactly how she had imagined them. Long, single-story buildings, probably built back in the 50s. Peeling plaster, broken windows, crooked porches, trash scattered in the yards, overturned crates, rusty pieces of old machinery. Chloe walked slowly along the row of houses, studying the few people she saw. An old woman in a headscarf carrying a bucket of water. A middle-aged man fixing a bicycle by the entrance. No one who looked like Andrew. And then she saw him. He was sitting on the steps of one of the houses, leaning back against the railing. Dirty, worn-out clothes, dark trousers, a faded jacket stained in places, unshaven face, messy hair. In his hand was a cheap plastic bottle with some cloudy liquid left inside. But the face, that face. Chloe stopped in her tracks. Her heart started pounding wildly. Andrew was sitting there. No, not Andrew, but his exact copy. The same features, the same gray eyes, the same shape of lips. Even the mole above the left eyebrow, just like Andrew's. The man lifted his head, feeling her stare. He looked at Chloe with the dull, unfocused eyes of a drunk. "What do you want?" he rasped. Chloe took a step forward. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself closer. "Are you Ross?" she asked, and her voice sounded strange, unfamiliar even to her. The man squinted. "Who's asking?" "My name is Chloe." She crouched down near the steps, so she was at his level. "I have something very important to tell you." "No money," Ross muttered. "And won't be. So say what you want and get it over with." Chloe took a deep breath. "You have a twin brother, Andrew." Ross froze. The bottle slipped from his hand and rolled down the steps. He stared at Chloe, and something flashed in his eyes. Understanding, fear, pain. "How do you know that?" he asked. His voice sounded different now, more sober. "I'm his wife," Chloe said simply. "And he's dying. He needs a bone marrow transplant, a donor, a blood relative. You're the only one who can save him." Ross turned away, staring somewhere into the yard. "I don't know any Andrew," he said dully. "You're mistaken. Go away." "You're not mistaken," Chloe insisted. "You're twins, born 42 years ago. Your parents died when you were 3. Andrew was taken in by your grandmother and you—" "Shut up!" Ross cut her off sharply. "I said shut up." He got to his feet, swaying. Chloe stood too. "Ross, please," she began, but he was already walking away deeper into the yard. "I don't have any brothers," he shouted over his shoulder. "Leave me alone." Chloe ran after him. "He's dying," she cried. "Do you hear me? Your brother is dying, and you're the only one who can save him." Ross stopped near a crooked shed. He leaned against the wall and lowered his head. "I can't," he said quietly. "Do you understand? I can't." "Why?" Chloe stepped closer. "Why can't you? He's your brother, your own blood." Ross slowly turned toward her. There was so much pain in his eyes that Chloe instinctively stepped back. "Because I'm no one," he said. "Do you get it? No one. A drunk at 42 with nothing. No family, no job, no future. I've never seen him in my life. He doesn't even know I exist. But I've known about him my whole life. I've been jealous my whole life. He was lucky. Grandma took him in. A good, smart woman. I was taken by an aunt. A bitter drunk who beat me and screamed that I ruined her life." He fell silent, breathing heavily. "I grew up in dirt and poverty," he continued. "In the same house I'm living in now. Started drinking at 14. Quit school at 15. Worked construction, as a loader, as a janitor. Drank every penny I earned. And he studied, became an engineer, had a normal life. And now you want me to go to him? For him to see what I've turned into? To be a reminder of what he could have been?" Chloe listened, tears running down her cheeks. "He doesn't care what you've become. she said through her tears. The only thing that matters to him is living. We never had children. We dreamed about a family, but it didn't happen. And now he has a chance to find out he had a brother, that he's not alone in this world. Isn't that important? Ross looked at her for a long time without speaking. How long does he have? He finally asked. The doctors say a few days, maybe a week. And if I agree, what do I have to do? Take tests, confirm you're a match, then surgery, the transplant. Is it dangerous? For me, I mean. Chloe shook her head. Not very. There are risks, but small ones. The doctors will explain everything. Ross ran a hand over his face. I'm a drunk, he said. My liver's shot. What if I'm not even suitable? Maybe, Chloe admitted. But we won't know unless we try. He stared off into the distance, thinking. And him? Will he want to see me? Ross asked quietly. When he finds out who I am? He doesn't know about you, Chloe answered honestly. His grandmother never told him, but I'm sure he'll want to. Andrew has always dreamed of family, of not being alone. Ross nodded, more to himself than to her. Okay, he said. I'll go with you. I'll take the tests. But I need to clean myself up first. I don't want him to see me like this. Chloe felt something loosen inside her. Hope. Real hope. For the first time in months. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. They took the bus back together. Ross sat by the window in silence, watching the scenery flash by. Chloe sat beside him, also silent. What could she say? What do you say to a man you've just pulled out of the life he's known for years? Ross had indeed cleaned himself up before leaving. He still looked worn and exhausted, but not like he had that morning on the steps. Tell me about him, Ross asked. About Andrew. What's he like? Chloe thought for a moment. He's kind, she said. Very kind. He never raises his voice, always tries to help. He loves reading science fiction, watching old movies. He works as an engineer at the factory, comes up with new solutions for the equipment. His colleagues respect him. He dreamed about having a family, about children. We couldn't have them. I couldn't get pregnant. We tried IVF, but it didn't work. Andrew suggested adoption, but I refused. I regret that now. Maybe if we'd had children, he would have had more to fight for. That's nonsense, Ross said darkly. When illness comes, it doesn't ask whether you have kids or not. It just takes. You say that like you know. I do. Ross nodded. My aunt died of cancer. Fast. 3 months. We couldn't do anything. She had 3 kids. Well, not counting me. I was adopted. But her biological children were there. Didn't make a difference. Chloe looked at him. How did you find out about your brother? From your aunt? She got drunk once and told me, Ross said. Said I had a twin who was taken in by some rich grandmother. That he was living well somewhere while I was left here to rot. I was about 7. Didn't really understand it back then. Later I grew up. Then I understood. Did you ever try to find him? No. I was ashamed. And what for? So he could see what kind of brother he has? A drunk and a failure? You're not a failure, Chloe said quietly. You just never had a chance. Everyone has a chance, Ross replied. I just didn't use mine. I drank, partied, didn't study. I could have at least finished school, gone into the army, found a proper job. But no, I chose the bottle. The bus slowed as it pulled into the station. We're here, Chloe said. We'll go straight to the hospital. The doctor is waiting. Ross nodded as he stood up. Chloe, he said, as they stepped off the bus. Thank you for finding me. Really. Maybe this is the only good thing I'll ever do in my life. Dr. Black met them in his office. He looked Ross over with a doctor's careful, assessing gaze. So, he said, you're Andrew Mathis's brother? Ross Mathis, he confirmed. His twin. Good. Let's take blood right away. The results will be ready in a few hours. If the compatibility is confirmed, we'll start preparing you for the procedure." They went to the treatment room. The nurse drew blood from Ross. He didn't even flinch. "Results in 3 hours," Dr. Black said. "You can wait in the hallway, or take a walk and come back." "We'll wait here," Chloe decided. They sat on a hard bench in the hospital corridor. It smelled of antiseptic and medicine. Doctors, nurses, and visitors passed by. Time dragged painfully slow. "Can I see him?" Ross suddenly asked. "Andrew, before he knows who I am, just to look at him." Chloe hesitated. "He's in intensive care. You can't just walk in, but there's a viewing window in the hallway." They went up to the 3rd floor. Intensive care. Chloe led Ross to the window. "That bed by the far wall," she said quietly. Ross pressed his forehead against the glass. He stared for a long time. Andrew lay motionless, pale, surrounded by tubes and wires. The monitor above his bed showed faint, uneven lines. "He looks like me," Ross said softly, "though I don't even remember what my face looks like sober." "He does," Chloe confirmed. "Very much." "Is he strong?" Ross asked. "Will he survive the surgery?" "I don't know," Chloe admitted honestly. "The doctors say the chances aren't high. His body is very weak, but it's the only chance." Ross nodded. "Then we'll hope." They went back to the corridor and sat down again. They waited. 1 hour, 2, 2.5. Finally, Dr. Black came out. His face was serious. "The results are in," he said. "Perfect match. 100% compatibility across all markers." Chloe felt tears rising in her throat. "What happens next?" she asked. "Now we need a full donor evaluation," Dr. Black said, looking at Ross. "It'll take a day or two. If everything checks out, we prepare for the transplant." "And if it doesn't?" Ross asked. Dr. Black sighed. "Then we'll have to consider other options. But let's not think about the worst yet. We'll start the tests right away." They took Ross away. Chloe stayed on the bench. She just sat there and waited, hoped, prayed to a God she didn't even believe in, but now desperately begged, "Please, let everything be okay. Please." The evaluation took all day. Chloe sat in the hallway while they moved Ross from one office to another. After each test, he came out looking more exhausted, but he didn't complain. "How do you feel?" Chloe asked after one of the procedures. "Fine," Ross answered shortly. "I'm used to it. Detox was worse." Chloe didn't know what to say. Detox. She couldn't even imagine that kind of life. And Ross had lived it for 42 years. By evening, the tests were done. Dr. Black invited them into his office. He sat at his desk, spreading out the reports in front of him. "The results are mixed," he began, and Chloe's heart dropped. "His liver is indeed in poor condition. The heart isn't perfect either. The lungs, well, for a smoker, they could be worse." "So I'm not suitable?" Ross asked evenly. "Not exactly." Dr. Black took off his glasses and rubbed them. "You are suitable. The compatibility is perfect. But the procedure will be risky, primarily for you. Your body may not tolerate anesthesia well, may not handle the bone marrow extraction. There is a risk of serious complications." Silence filled the room. "So I could die?" Ross asked calmly. "Yes." Dr. Black looked him in the eyes. "The probability is small, but it exists. I have to warn you. If you refuse, I'll understand. No one has the right to demand that kind of risk from you." Ross was quiet for a moment. "And if I agree, what are Andrew's chances?" "With the transplant, 50-50. It may take, it may not. His body is very weak. Without it, 0. He will die within a week, 2 at most." Ross nodded. "Then do it," he said simply. "When?" "Are you sure?" Dr. Black leaned forward. "Think again. You still have time." "There is no time," Ross replied. "You said so yourself. So let's do it. Tomorrow? The day after? Whenever you say. Dr. Black looked at Chloe. You're his wife. What do you say? Chloe looked at Ross. This man she had known for just one day was ready to risk his life for a brother who didn't even know he existed. If Ross agrees, she said slowly, then I'm grateful. But I don't want him risking his life because of us. Not because of you, Ross interrupted. Because of me. Do you understand? This is the only thing I can do, the only meaningful thing in my life. Maybe I'll die in that operating room. Maybe not. But if I don't try, I'll die anyway. Just later, in some ditch. At least this way it will mean something. Dr. Black sighed. All right. We'll schedule the surgery for the day after tomorrow. You'll need to stay in the hospital so we can prepare you. I'll stay, Ross agreed. They gave Ross a bed in a shared room on the 4th floor. Chloe helped him settle in. She brought clean pajamas from home. Andrew and Ross were the same size, along with toiletries and a towel. Thank you, Ross said, taking the things. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, Chloe replied. You're doing so much for us. This is the least I can do. Ross sat down on the bed and ran his hand over the clean pillowcase. It's been a long time since I slept in a bed like this, he said thoughtfully. 20 years, maybe. How did you live all these years? Chloe asked, sitting down in the chair beside him. Did you work? Here and there. Ross shrugged. Construction, loading jobs, janitor work. Haven't worked at all for the past 5 years. I live off whatever I'm given, whatever I can find. Sometimes I collect bottles and return them. Chloe listened, her throat tightening with pity. What about family? Were you ever married? Ross gave a bitter smile. Once, long time ago, about 20 years back, met a girl at the factory. Her name was Cheryl. She was good, patient, tried to get me to quit drinking. We lived together for a year. Then I beat her badly while I was drunk. Don't even remember why. She left. She did the right thing. We never saw each other again. No children? No. Thank God. Can you imagine what kind of father I would have been? My aunt raised her 3 kids, all of them alcoholics. It's better I never had any. Chloe wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. What do you say to someone who lost every chance before he was even grown? Ross, she finally said, after the surgery, if everything goes well, maybe you could try to start over, rehab, find some kind of job. Ross looked at her for a long moment. Why? He asked simply. I'm 42. I drank my life away, ruined my health. Who needs me? Andrew does, Chloe said quietly. He has no one but me, and now he has you, a brother, his own blood. He won't want a brother like me. He will. Chloe leaned forward. I know Andrew. He's felt alone his whole life, even with me. He dreamed about family, about having relatives. And you're his blood, his only family. Ross turned toward the window. We'll see, he said vaguely. Maybe I won't survive the surgery. Then it won't matter. You will, Chloe said stubbornly. You will. The next day, Chloe went to see Andrew. He was conscious, one of those rare moments when the medication eased for a while. He lay with his eyes closed, breathing heavily. Chloe sat beside him and took his hand. Andrew, she called softly. He opened his eyes, recognized her, tried to smile. Chloe, he whispered. You came? I always come. She squeezed his fingers. How do you feel? Bad, he admitted honestly. Very bad. Chloe, I'm tired. So tired. Don't say that. Tears filled her eyes. Please don't. I have to. Andrew turned his head and looked at her. If something happens, don't blame yourself, okay? We were happy. 12 years. That's a lot. Andrew, listen. Chloe leaned closer. They found a donor, a perfect match. The surgery is the day after tomorrow. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, fear, disbelief. Really? He whispered. Who? Chloe wanted to tell him the truth, but something stopped her. Ross had asked her not to tell Andrew who he was. Not yet. First the surgery. A donor from the registry, she lied. They found a compatible person, a rare stroke of luck. And he agreed? Yes, he agreed. They're preparing everything. Andrew closed his eyes. I can't believe it, he whispered. I'd already accepted it. Thought it was over. It's not over. Chloe kissed his hand. You're going to live. We're going to live. Together. He squeezed her fingers weakly, barely noticeable. I love you, he said. Whatever happens, know that. I know. Tears ran down her cheeks. And I love you. So much. A nurse stepped into the room. I'm sorry, you need to leave. It's time for his procedures. Chloe nodded, stood up, kissed Andrew on the forehead one more time. See you tomorrow, she said. Everything will be okay. That evening, Chloe went to see Ross again. He was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. An IV was in his arm, a tube running up to a stand beside the bed. How are you? She asked. Fine. Ross turned his head. They're giving me something for my liver. Say they need to prepare my body. Are you scared? Yes, he admitted honestly. I am. I've never had surgery before. Well, once when I broke my arm, but that doesn't count. Chloe sat down. I'm scared too, she said. For you and for Andrew. It feels like two lives on a scale. If one life matters more than the other, Ross smirked faintly, then his definitely matters more. He has you, a job, a future. I've got nothing. Chloe, if I don't make it, tell him. Tell him I'm glad I did at least one good thing in my life, and that I always knew about him. I was jealous, but I wasn't angry. I was glad he had it better. You'll tell him yourself, Chloe said firmly. After the surgery, when you're both alive. Ross gave a weak smile. Optimist. Realist. Chloe took a small bag out of her purse. I brought you apples and cookies. The nurse said it's allowed. Thanks. Ross picked up an apple and turned it in his hands. You know, I remembered something. Our grandmother lived in the next state. Mom's mother. The one who took Andrew. I saw her once when I was little. About 5. My aunt took me to her place to ask for money. The old woman was strict, looked at me, put a candy in my hand, and told my aunt, "Don't come back. I don't want to see you again." My aunt screamed and cursed, but Grandma closed the door. That was it. I thought about that many times later. Why didn't she take me? Why only Andrew? We were twins, both her grandsons. Maybe she couldn't afford to take both, Chloe suggested. She was alone, living on a pension. Maybe, Ross agreed. Or maybe she just didn't want to. She saw my aunt drinking, saw what she was doing to me, but she did nothing. It was easier that way. One good grandson, the other one doesn't exist. Like I wasn't even there. Chloe stayed silent. What could she say? The grandmother was long gone, and whatever reasons she had were buried with her. That night before the surgery, Chloe didn't sleep. She lay on the couch at home, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how she and Andrew had met, about their first kiss in the park, their wedding, the dreams of children, and how the illness had stormed into their lives and turned everything upside down. And now tomorrow was the surgery. 2 men on operating tables. One, her husband, whom she had loved for 12 years. The other, his brother, whom she had known for 2 days, but who had already become important. Please, she prayed in the darkness, please let them both survive. Let them have a chance to know each other. Let Andrew finally have what he's dreamed of his whole life, a family. In the morning, she got up early, washed, got dressed, and went to the hospital. Ross was already being prepared for surgery, changed into a hospital gown, lying on a gurney. He was pale, but calm. How are you? Chloe asked. Fine, he said. They gave me something. My head's spinning a little, but it's okay. Ross. Chloe took his hand. Thank you. For everything. Too early to thank me. He gave a faint smile. It might not go the way we hope. It will, Chloe insisted. I believe it. They wheeled him toward the operating room. Chloe stayed in the hallway. Andrew was taken about 10 minutes later, also on a gurney, also pale, barely conscious. Dr. Black came out last, already dressed in surgical scrubs. How long will it take? Chloe asked. 3 or 4 hours, he replied. Maybe longer. Wait in the lobby. It's more comfortable. The operating room doors closed. A red light above them turned on. Chloe went to the lobby, sat on a couch, took out her phone, then just sat there, staring at the time. 10 a.m. The surgery began. 11, noon, 1, 2. Every minute felt like forever. Chloe walked around the lobby, drank water from the machine, sat down again. Other people were waiting too, waiting for their loved ones to come out of surgery. Some cried, some prayed, some just stared at the wall. At 3:30, a nurse came out of the operating room. Chloe jumped to her feet. How are they? She asked, barely able to breathe. The surgery is still ongoing, the nurse said, but so far everything is going well. The donor handled the extraction normally. The recipient is now receiving the transplant. Chloe sank back onto the couch. Her hands were shaking. So far everything is going well. The words echoed like a prayer. Another hour. Another half hour. Finally, around 5 in the evening, the operating room door opened. Dr. Black stepped out. He pulled off his mask and wiped his forehead. He looked exhausted, but he was smiling. It was successful, he said. Both are alive. The donor is in intensive care, stable condition. The recipient as well. The bone marrow has been transplanted. Now we wait to see if it takes. Chloe didn't even remember crossing the room. She grabbed his hand, not knowing what to say. Thank you, was all she managed. Thank you. Dr. Black nodded. Don't thank me. Thank that man. Ross is a real hero. Chloe kept nodding, tears running down her face. Tears of relief, joy, hope. They survived. Both of them survived. Now came the hardest part, waiting. The first 24 hours after the surgery were the scariest. Andrew lay in intensive care, connected to machines. Ross was in a critical care room, both unconscious, both under constant supervision. Chloe moved between floors. She would sit by the window of intensive care, looking at Andrew lying motionless, then go up to Ross. The nurses told her to go home and rest, but she couldn't. She couldn't leave them alone. On the second day, Ross woke up. He opened his eyes and groaned in pain. A nurse immediately came over, checked his vitals, gave him pain medication. How is he? Ross asked hoarsely, barely moving his lips. Andrew, how is he? Still unconscious, the nurse replied, but stable. His body is fighting. Ross closed his eyes. Good, he whispered, and drifted back to sleep. Chloe sat beside his bed, holding his hand. His hand was hot. His temperature had risen. The doctors said that was normal after a surgery like this, that the body was reacting. But Chloe was still afraid. On the third day, Andrew woke up. Chloe was there when he opened his eyes. He looked at her, recognized her, tried to smile. I'm alive? He asked weakly. You are. Chloe nodded, squeezing his hand. The surgery was successful. You had the transplant. The donor, is he okay? Chloe nodded. Yes, he's fine. Andrew closed his eyes and exhaled. Tell him thank you. From me. Tell him I'll always be in his debt. I will, Chloe promised. A week passed. Andrew was moved out of intensive care to a regular room. Ross, too. They were on different floors. Chloe still couldn't bring herself to tell the truth. She was waiting for them both to grow stronger, for the right moment. Dr. Black came in every day, checking test results, monitoring the numbers. "The bone marrow is taking," he told Chloe on the 10th day after surgery. "His blood counts are improving. Your husband is recovering." "And Ross?" Chloe asked. "With him, it's more complicated." Dr. Black frowned. "His liver is causing complications. We'll need to keep him here longer and run a course of therapy. But overall, he did better than I expected." Chloe went up to see Ross. He was sitting on the bed, pale and thinner, but no longer hooked up to IVs. "How are you?" she asked. "It hurts," Ross admitted, "but it's manageable. They say another 2 weeks and I can be discharged." "Where will you go?" Chloe asked carefully. "Back home to Pinewood?" Ross shrugged. "Probably. Nowhere else to go." "And what if—" Chloe hesitated. "What if you tried staying here, in the city? I could help you find a room, maybe some kind of job. You don't want to go back to that life." Ross looked at her for a long moment. "Chloe, you're kind, but I'm realistic. Who's going to hire me? An alcoholic with no education and no proper work history? And I'm not used to living any other way. I'll go back to Pinewood, and it'll all start again. People like me don't change." "Andrew could help," Chloe insisted. "When he finds out you're his brother, he'll want you close." "Don't tell him," Ross said quietly. "Why?" Chloe didn't understand. "You saved his life. You have every right." "I have no rights," Ross cut her off. "I did what I had to do. Now my role is finished." Chloe wanted to argue, but a nurse walked in with medication, and the conversation ended. On the 14th day after surgery, Andrew was discharged. He was still weak, but the doctors said he would recover faster at home, in familiar surroundings. Chloe brought him home in a taxi, helped him climb up to the 7th floor. The elevator, of course, wasn't working. Andrew breathed heavily, stopping at every landing. "It's okay," Chloe encouraged him. "You'll get stronger soon." At home, it smelled fresh. Chloe had cleaned the day before, aired everything out, put on clean sheets. Andrew walked into the living room and lowered himself onto the couch. "I miss this so much," he said, looking around. "The house, you, normal life." Chloe sat beside him. "Everything will be okay now," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "You'll recover, go back to work, and we'll start over." Andrew nodded, holding her close. "You know what I realized in the hospital?" he asked. "Life is short. You can't keep putting important things off. Remember how you wanted a house with a garden? Let's buy one. We have enough for a down payment. We'll take a loan for the rest." "Are you sure?" Chloe lifted her head and looked at him. "Absolutely. And one more thing. Let's try adoption. Really try. We'll file the paperwork, get on the waiting list. I want a family. A real big family." Chloe nodded, trying not to cry. "Okay, we'll try." They sat there holding each other, and Chloe thought, "I have to tell him about Ross, about who the donor really was. He has the right to know." "Andrew," she began, "there's something I need to tell you about the donor." Andrew pulled back and looked at her. "What happened? Is something wrong with him?" "No, everything's fine. It's just—" Chloe took a deep breath. "The donor wasn't from the registry. It was your twin brother. His name is Ross." Andrew froze. For a few seconds, he just stared at her without blinking. "What?" he finally managed. "What brother? I don't have a brother." "You do," Chloe said gently. "You share the same mother and father. You're twins. You were born together. After your parents died, you were separated. Your grandmother took you, and he was taken by your father's sister." Andrew stood up and walked across the room. "That's impossible," he said. "Grandma would have told me." "She wouldn't have hidden something like that." "She could have," Chloe said quietly. "And she did. All her life. She didn't want you to know." "Why?" Andrew turned around. "Why wouldn't she tell me?" "I don't know." Chloe shrugged. "Maybe she was ashamed of the family's past. Maybe she wanted to protect you. Andrew sank back onto the couch and covered his face with his hands. I have a brother, he repeated, as if he couldn't believe it. All my life I thought I was alone, and I have a brother. Yes, Chloe said, and he saved your life. Where is he? Andrew looked up. Where is he now? He's still in the hospital, recovering after the surgery. It was hard on him. There were complications, but he's getting better. I want to see him, Andrew said firmly. Now, let's go to the hospital. You're too weak, Chloe protested. You were just discharged. You need rest. I don't care. Andrew stood up. I have a brother. I didn't know about him for 42 years. I can't wait another day. They were at the hospital within an hour. Andrew struggled up to the 4th floor, holding onto the railing. Chloe walked beside him, ready to catch him if he stumbled. Outside Ross's room, she stopped him. Wait, she said. There's something else you need to know. Ross, he's not like you. He's had a hard life, a very hard one. He was raised by a cruel woman, grew up in poverty. He became an alcoholic. He lives in an old house in Pinewood. He doesn't work. He looks worn down. Andrew listened, his face hardening. I'm ready, he said. Let's go. They walked into the room. Ross was lying in bed, reading an old magazine. He looked up, saw them, and froze. For a few seconds, the brothers stared at each other in silence. Ross was the first to look away. Hi, he said hoarsely. I see you're on your feet. That's good. Andrew stepped closer slowly. He looked at Ross like he was looking into a mirror. The same face, the same eyes, the same features. Only worn, tired, aged too soon. You're my brother? Andrew asked. Yes, Ross said. Your twin. Doesn't really look like it though, right? You look like a man. I look like… Don't say that, Andrew interrupted. Please. He pulled a chair closer and sat down beside the bed. Why didn't I know? He asked. Why didn't Grandma tell me? She didn't want you to know about me, Ross replied. Maybe she was ashamed, or maybe she just thought it was better that way. One good grandson, the other like he didn't exist. That's wrong. Andrew shook his head. I had the right to know. We both had the right to grow up together. But we didn't, Ross said with a shrug. That's how it happened. You can't change it now. Andrew reached out and touched Ross's hand. Thank you, he said quietly, for agreeing, for saving my life. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't have to. Ross looked away. I just did what I had to. The only good thing I've ever done. It's not the only good thing, Andrew said firmly. It's the most important one. You gave me a chance to live, and I want you to be part of my life. Our life. With Chloe. Ross gave a bitter smile. Andrew, look at me. I'm an alcoholic. What use am I? Just embarrassment. Not embarrassment, Andrew said stubbornly. A brother. My own blood. And if you want, we can try. Rehab, a job, a place to live. I'll help. Why? Ross didn't understand. You have your own life, your own happiness. Why drag me into it? Andrew was silent for a moment. Because I've been alone my whole life, he finally said. I had no one except Grandma, and then Chloe. I always dreamed of family, of having relatives, and now there's you, my brother, my twin. We share the same blood. How could I turn away? Ross closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. I don't deserve this, he whispered. I don't deserve a brother like you. You do, Andrew said firmly. You saved my life. Now it's my turn to save yours. Chloe stood by the window, watching the brothers, crying quietly so she wouldn't interrupt them. She had known Andrew for 12 years, but she had never seen him like this, open, vulnerable, happy, and sad at the same time. When are you being discharged? Andrew asked. In about a week, Ross replied. If the tests are good. Then you're coming to stay with us. Andrew nodded to himself. We have a 2-bedroom apartment. There's a couch in the living room. You can sleep there until we figure something else out. Deal? Ross looked at him for a long moment. I might relapse, he warned. You understand? I've been drinking for 28 years. You don't just stop like that. I might mess up, get drunk, cause trouble. Then we'll treat it, Andrew said calmly. We'll find a good specialist. I'll be there. Chloe will be there. We'll get through it. Ross nodded, unable to speak. Okay, he finally forced out. I'll try. But if it doesn't work... It will, Andrew said with confidence. It will. Chloe stepped out into the hallway, leaving the brothers alone. They sat side by side, talking quietly. Andrew told him about his life, his job, their grandmother. Ross listened, nodding from time to time. Chloe leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. The exhaustion hit her all at once. She had barely slept for 3 weeks. Always at the hospital, always tense, always afraid. But now the fear was fading. Andrew was alive. He was recovering. He had a brother. The family he had always dreamed of. The road ahead would be long and difficult. Ross would have to fight his addiction. Andrew would have to rebuild his health. Both of them would have to learn how to be brothers after 42 years apart. But they would manage. Chloe believed that. Because they weren't alone. They had each other. And that was what mattered most. Ross was discharged 8 days later. Andrew insisted that Chloe go pick him up in a taxi. He was still too weak, and the doctors had told him not to strain himself. Chloe arrived in the morning and helped Ross pack his few belongings. Ready? She asked. Ross nodded, but it was clear he was nervous. Andrew's waiting at home, Chloe said. He made lunch. He wanted to come himself, but I wouldn't let him. He needs to take care of himself. I understand, Ross replied quietly. They went downstairs and got into a taxi. Ross stared out the window at the passing city. Chloe saw how tense his shoulders were, how tightly his jaw was clenched. Ross, she said softly, everything will be okay. Really? How do you know? He turned to her. I've been drinking for so many years. I've tried to quit so many times. Never worked. Why would it be different now? Because now you're not alone, Chloe said simply. Before, you had no one. Now you have us. Andrew and me. We'll help you. The taxi stopped in front of their building. Chloe paid and helped Ross out. He stood there, looking at the ordinary apartment block, and Chloe saw fear in his eyes. Fear of something new, unfamiliar, of a life he had never lived. They climbed up to the 7th floor. Chloe took out her keys and opened the door. We're home, she called. Andrew came out of the kitchen. He looked better than a week ago, color back in his cheeks, a light in his eyes. Ross, he said, smiling. Come in. Don't be shy. Ross stepped over the threshold and looked around. A small hallway, a corridor leading to the living room. Clean, cozy, the smell of something delicious in the air. I made chicken and potatoes, Andrew said. Hope you're hungry. Yes, Ross nodded. Thank you. They went into the kitchen. It was small but bright, with a round table covered by a tablecloth. Andrew pulled a tray of chicken and potatoes out of the oven. Sit, he said, pointing to a chair. Ross sat down carefully, like a guest in someone else's home. Andrew and Chloe sat across from him. Help yourself. Andrew put chicken and potatoes on Ross's plate. Don't be shy. You're home. Ross picked up his fork and took a bite. He chewed slowly, as if he had forgotten the taste of real food. It's good, he said. I haven't eaten like this in a long time. They ate in silence. Chloe looked at the brothers and thought how similar they were, and how different at the same time. Andrew, well-groomed, healthier, confident. Ross, worn down, sick, lost. But the same features, the same gestures, even their voices sounded alike. "Show him the room?" Chloe asked Andrew when they finished. "Of course." Andrew stood up. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll sleep." They went into the living room, a large corner sofa against the wall, a TV, a bookshelf. "Here," Andrew said, pointing at the sofa. "It pulls out into a bed. Not the most comfortable, but it'll do for now. Once we're both fully back on our feet, we'll look for a place for you. Rent a room or a small studio." "No," Ross protested. "You've already done so much. No need to spend more on me." "It's not spending," Andrew corrected him. "It's helping. You're my brother. I want you to have a decent place, a job, a life." Ross sat down on the sofa and ran his hand over the fabric. "Andrew," he said without looking up, "I appreciate all this. I really do. But you need to understand, I might relapse. I've lived like this for years. It's not just a habit. It's addiction." "I know," Andrew nodded. "Chloe told me. That's why tomorrow we're going to see a specialist. We'll start treatment. And if it doesn't work, we'll try another way. And another. And another. Until something does." The first days were hard. Ross woke up at night drenched in cold sweat. His hands shook, his head pounded. He would get up, walk around the apartment, drink water, smoke on the balcony. Andrew would hear him and come out. "Bad?" he'd ask. "It's breaking me," Ross would admit. "I want a drink. So badly it's driving me crazy." "Hang on," Andrew would say. "Just a little longer. The doctor said the first 2 weeks are the worst. It'll get easier." "I don't know if I can make it." Ross would grip the balcony railing with white knuckles. "You can." Andrew would stand beside him. "I won't let you fall." Ross went to outpatient treatment every day. Andrew took him by taxi. He was still weak himself, but he insisted on being there. Chloe helped however she could. She cooked, made sure Ross took his medication, talked to him in the evenings. "Tell me about your life," she asked one evening as they sat in the kitchen with tea. Andrew was asleep in the bedroom, and they spoke in low voices so they wouldn't wake him. Ross thought for a moment. "What is there to tell? Life's just life. Dirty, hard, not much joy. I remember my aunt beating me with a belt for breaking a cup. I remember kids at school laughing at me because my clothes were torn. I remember my first bottle. I was 14. Stole vodka from my uncle and drank it. At first it tasted awful. Then it felt good, easy, like all the problems disappeared, and that was it." "Was there anything good?" Chloe asked. Ross was quiet. "Cheryl," he finally said. "Since she left me, I've missed her. I know I hurt her, but I can't stop loving her." "Maybe you could try to find her?" Chloe suggested. "At least apologize." Ross shook his head. "Why? So many years have passed. She probably has her own life now, a family, maybe kids. What am I to her now? Just a reminder of a bad past." "Maybe she forgave you," Chloe insisted. "Maybe she'd be glad to know you're alive, that you're trying to change." "Maybe," Ross said vaguely. "But not now. First, I need to get myself together. Prove to myself I can live without the bottle. Then, we'll see." A month passed. November. Andrew continued to recover. He went to follow-up appointments, had his blood tested. The doctors were pleased. The bone marrow had taken perfectly. His blood counts were almost normal. Ross was holding on, each day a little better. The craving hadn't disappeared completely, but it was weaker. His hands barely shook anymore. He slept more deeply. He started helping around the house. At the end of November, he relapsed. Ross disappeared for an entire day. He left in the morning, saying he was going to the store, and never came back. Andrew and Chloe waited, called around. Ross didn't have a phone. By evening, Andrew couldn't take it anymore and went out to look for him. He found Ross near a store around the corner. Ross was sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall, drunk, with an empty bottle beside him. Andrew crouched down next to him. "Ross," he called softly. Ross opened his eyes and looked at his brother with a blurry gaze. "I'm sorry," he rasped. "I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. I couldn't hold on." "It's okay." Andrew put an arm around his shoulders. "It happens. This isn't the end. You'll get up and keep going. I let you down." Ross closed his eyes. "You believed in me, and You didn't let me down," Andrew interrupted. "You're human. People make mistakes. That's not what matters. What matters is that you tried. You held on for a month. That's already a lot. Next time you'll last longer." And he tried again. He went back to treatment, took his medication, attended support group meetings. This time, more seriously, more responsibly. He realized his brother wouldn't abandon him, even after a relapse. And that gave him strength. December brought the first snow. Andrew kept getting stronger. At the beginning of the month, the doctors allowed him to return to work part-time. He went back to the factory, and his colleagues welcomed him like a hero. Work was hard, but he was happy. Happy to return to normal life, to feel needed again. In mid-December, Andrew offered Ross a job. "Remember I told you there was a janitor position at the factory?" he said over dinner. "It's still open. I talked to management. They're willing to hire you. The pay isn't great, but it's steady, and it's a start." Ross froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Seriously?" he asked. "Me? An alcoholic with no proper work history?" "I vouched for you," Andrew explained. "I told them you're my brother, that you're in treatment, that you're reliable. They agreed to give you one chance, just one. If you relapse or show up drunk, it's over. But if you hold on, maybe something better will come later." Ross stared at his plate for a long time. I don't know what to say," he finally managed. "Thank you. Really, thank you. I'll try. I'll really try." "I know," Andrew nodded. "You start Monday." The first day of work was hard. Ross arrived at the factory at 7 in the morning. The facility manager, Todd, met him, showed him around, explained his duties. "You're responsible for this section," Todd said, pointing. "Lunch is at 12 in the factory cafeteria. Any questions?" "No," Ross replied. "All clear." "Good." Todd looked at him carefully. "Andrew vouched for you. He's a good guy. Don't let him down." "I won't," Ross promised. He worked all morning without stopping, cleared snow, swept, took out trash. His back ached, his hands froze even inside his gloves, but he kept going. He wanted to prove, to himself, to Andrew, to everyone, that he could do it, that he wasn't hopeless. In the evening, Andrew picked him up from work. They walked through the snow-covered city, and Ross told him about his first day. "I'm exhausted," he admitted, "but I'm glad. You know, I haven't felt this useful in a long time." "See?" Andrew smiled. "And you were afraid. Now you're a working man, with a salary, with prospects." "What prospects does a janitor have?" Ross snorted. "Whatever prospects you want. Maybe in a year you'll be running the place, or move into another position. The important thing is, you've started." Ross walked beside his brother, snow crunching under their feet, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel shame. He felt quiet pride. Yes, it was just a first day, just a broom and a shovel, but along with them, he was holding hope. A beginning had been made, small, uncertain, but real. They celebrated Christmas together, the three of them, Andrew, Chloe, and Ross. They set the table in the living room, put up a small Christmas tree. For the first time in many years, Ross felt like part of a family. "What shall we drink to?" Chloe asked, raising a glass of juice. There was no alcohol on the table, out of respect for Ross. "To family," Andrew said, "to finding each other, to a second chance." "To a new life," Chloe added. "To you," Ross said quietly, "for believing in me, for not giving up on me." They clinked glasses, drank juice, ate, laughed. Some holiday show was playing on TV, but they didn't watch. They talked, shared plans. "I want to buy a house," Andrew said. "A small one outside the city with a garden, so we can grow vegetables and fruit in the summer, have a place to relax." "I want a child," Chloe said suddenly. "To adopt." Andrew and I have talked about it for a long time. We decided to try. File the paperwork at the beginning of the year. Ross looked at them and felt something warm spread inside him. "And I want to train as a mechanic," he said. "There are evening classes at the factory, 6 months of study, then an exam. If I pass, I can work in the workshop. Better pay, more interesting work." "That's a great idea," Andrew said. "I'll help you study. Math and technical drawings. That's my thing." They laughed and talked late into the night. When the clock struck midnight, Chloe turned off the lights in the living room, and only the small Christmas tree lights remained. Their warm glow reflected in the windows, in the glasses of juice, in Andrew's eyes. For the first time in many years, Ross was celebrating Christmas not on a cold street or among strangers, but at home, at a table where he was wanted. He stood there, looking at his brother and his brother's wife, and thought, "This is happiness. Simple, human happiness." He knew there would be challenges ahead: treatment, work, responsibility, the constant fight not to relapse. But he was no longer afraid of the future. He had a family he had never even dared to dream about. It found him where he least expected it, and he was happy. For the first time in 42 years, truly happy. Did you enjoy the story? Then give it a like and subscribe. Your support is what inspires us to create new stories. The next one is already waiting for you on the main screen. Wishing you all the very best and happiness. See you again soon, friends.